It's only day two of the second Trump administration, and his White House's website already has 5 pages filled with various executive orders that he's already signed from yesterday. So which orders did he sign? And how will he be working with Congress to execute his agenda? These are important questions, and joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Josh Brecheen. He's a member of the Homeland Security Committee as well as the Budget Committee, and he represents the 2nd Congressional District of the great state of Oklahoma. Congressman Brecheen, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you, my friend.
Thanks, Jody. Good to be with you.
All right, so we have lots and lots and lots of executive orders that have already taken place and signed by President Trump, and it's just day two. So what were some of the most pressing ones that he needed to address as soon as possible that he jumped on?
Yeah, look, I think that energy dominance, a return to that, and the number of executive orders that are trying to return us back to common sense so that we'll utilize the gold that's under the ground, as he likes to call it, versus things that are unreliable and that often take taxpayers to subsidize tax collection of monies, then to prop up industries like wind and solar. Sadly, that's where this administration has been moving, and Trump is correcting that. And then, of course, the border, the number of executive orders to end the catch and release. By law, the Immigration and Nationality Act says that they are to be detained until there is a decision, an adjudication. And this administration has opened up the floodgates of catching them, releasing them in the interior, and the professionals call that notice to disappear. It used to be known as notice to appear for a court hearing. They flippantly call it notice to disappear, and we all know what that implies. And then, up to 12 years, these people are going to be embedded and then hide when they know that their asylum claim is fraudulent anyways. Why not just break one more law in addition to coming in illegally? In addition to that, you've also got the Remain in Mexico policy, widely popular. The physical barriers that by executive order Biden stepped in a few days after taking office, and by his pen, like a king, he overrode the will of Congress, who had voted, and it was signed into law previously, for 200 mile of physical barriers. Biden took his pen and unconstitutionally undid that. President Trump is restoring what we all know to be truth. Physical barriers work. Senator Biden said that 10 years ago. And I'm quoting him almost verbatim. When he was a senator, Joe Biden said the reason why we like physical barriers, we employ them, is because of the drugs that are coming in between the ports of entry. And then, just the myriad of 60 plus different decisions that this administration will have to undo. That's how many decisions that by his pen, Biden created havoc in the largest mass importation of illegals coming across our southern border. And so we're not done.
Wow. You mentioned so many issues there. I wish we could kind of go one by one through all of that, but you prefaced it all by talking about common sense. That seemed to be such a major underpinning of everything from yesterday. It's like, let's return to common sense, which obviously implies, and we've all seen it, we've watched it for the last 4 years. It seems as though every major decision that the Biden administration put forth was based on just the opposite of common sense. So what are you anticipating as we go forward? I mean, you just mentioned a lot of things that President Trump already has implemented and signed, executive orders, reversing a lot of things. What are you kind of a 30,000-foot view anticipating the next 4 years under the Trump administration, particularly as it relates to just common sense? What can we expect?
I think you can expect the contrast. I think we all watched as whatever President Trump was for previously as 45, this administration, just prior to him coming in as 47, was the contrast, came in and undid every bit of that. Now, President Trump is coming back in and reversing it all. And I look forward to seeing that happen. I would love to see us lock in once and for all the Article 1 powers that say, you as a former member of the House know well that all legislative powers to be vested in the Congress, so we didn't have this constant ping pong battle of Democrat versus Republican utilizing executive orders when our founders would have said that's never where we intended. But the president has no choice. Biden has created these problems all by executive order, specifically to the border I'm referencing. And so President Trump has to come back in, undo those. I'd like to see us right-size our government back to constitutional bounds. I say this often. George Washington issued 8 executive orders, and now we're at a place where, on average, every president is having to issue 200 or more in the last 20 and 30 years. We need to return back to a place to where this is not constantly occurring and where we can have stability.
I think that is an excellent point. Congressman Brecheen, what's it going to take to get there? What type of action does Congress need to put forth to reassert the authority that the Constitution gave it and that over the years has been surrendered to the White House?
Well, Jody, we've all heard the term parchment barriers. It's kind of a founding father era discussion where they said, if you have people that aren't really in their hearts beholden to integrity, these things we write down by law, they're just parchment barriers. The Magna Carta, written in 1215, was just a parchment barrier. Many kings that came after began to not abide by it. As John Adams in our founding era said, we would be a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And so we've got to return there. Article 1, Section 1, all legislative powers to be vested in the Congress is sufficient. But sadly, we've had Supreme Court decisions that do not abide by that. And so I actually am working on something. It's called the Bridle Act. Kat Kemick's got a measure called the Reins Act that would put bureaucracy back into a place of restraint. And there's actually a place in the Federalist Papers, rather, that talk about the whole reason that the founders had impeachment was it was to be a bridle in the hands of the legislative bodies to be used upon the executive servants of the government. And in tandem with that, George Mason, founding father, he in the Constitutional Convention said, we've got to add this term high crimes and misdemeanors, because it was only treason and bribery until George Mason insisted upon that. If you go back and look at that discussion, he said, because we'll have people who won't abide by the Constitution, and the parchment barrier won't keep them from doing things that integrity should. And so I'm working on a measure again called the Bridle Act that would put a lockdown, kind of like what the Reins Act does for federal agencies, and try to apply it to executive action. And my team is working on that.
Sounds like an outstanding piece of legislation in advance. Thank you for your leadership on that. We certainly want to be keeping a pulse on it as it goes forward. We've only got a couple of minutes left here. How do you anticipate the Republican Party, the majority, now both in the House and the Senate, to work with the White House on President Trump's priorities?
Look, I look forward to so many of the things that he's talked about. Of course, anybody from Oklahoma too knows that I have extensively been so concerned, and when I talk to Oklahomans about our deficit spending, and the highlight to me is Russ Vought at OMB, and Russ is someone that has been a champion in the past under the Trump administration of trying to right-size government spending, and I just had a conversation with the incoming Treasury Secretary nominee. And I know Russ is in those conversations. That excites me. We've got to have people that are paying attention to the bond market, understand what's happening when we're trying to go and make sure people want to invest in the full faith and credit because of the deficit spending, because we've gone from AAA to AA plus of 2 of the 3 rating agencies that are notable. And we have a problem because investors, when they have a choice between us or Australia, are wondering. This is a sad reality right now. They are wondering, will America make good on its promise? Will this bond be really what it's designed to be, a full return on my investment? And so we've got to stabilize that. We've got to make sure we're in our 10-year securities, we get back into a range that is not costing us $950 billion. When you hear people talk about our interest payments, costing more than what we spend on veterans, our defense, our total defense, flushed down the toilet, just interest payments. In your era, we were running $300 billion on interest payments because of a much better interest environment.
Congressman Josh Brecheen, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. Wow, it's going to be an exciting time. Thank you for your leadership on it.